Good evening, everyone. We apologize there. We seem to have lost connection, but we are back live again, and we're going to pick right back up where we left off. Judge Oliver was just sharing with us in such a powerful way about the importance of the local state elections, how important that is. We want to keep this discussion going. Thank you, Facebook and YouTube. I want you guys to come on back in quickly. If you will, do me a favor, about 5 or 10 people, share this broadcast. Let's get our numbers back up real quickly. Share this right now, right there at the bottom of your screen, so we can get our numbers back where we were. But let's keep this discussion going. I think we're going to take it to Elder Martin's going to pick us back up with the importance. We're talking about how important it is to the aggressiveness, the importance of the local elections. Let's go back to you, Elder Martin. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Haney, and Judge, thank you for setting us up in an amazing way, particularly from the perspective of the judicial. Folks don't understand, judicial judges have to be sort of, what do you call it, reaffirmed every 4 years? Not necessarily a vote, you're appointed, then you have to be reaffirmed through the vote. I like to give real life examples, right? And I know a lot of folks in this country are utilizing the Affordable Care Act. They only want to call it Obamacare when it's being demonized, but it has put 32 million Americans and given them health insurance. A real life example of why local elections matter is Georgia has not expanded Medicaid because the governor decided not to. So there is money left on the table for folks in this state, about 1 million people, that will be covered with affordable health insurance if we simply expanded Medicaid. But because the governor said no, and the legislature said no, we're not gonna do it. Now guess what? Their elections don't fall during the presidential. The governor of Georgia is elected in off even years. So he was just elected in 2018. He won't be reelected until 2022. Those elections are critical because there's literally money sitting on the table, not to have people getting a check to go spend and buy a PS5 with, but to have health insurance, Pastor.
Sure. People
that are dealing with ailments, people that are living with simple illnesses that could be, if they had health insurance, children. But because another party said no, the money's sitting there.
Sure.
And those kinds of real life examples are the ones that we need to be concerned with. District attorneys are elected, not in presidential years. Judges are reaffirmed, and sometimes even, depending on the court, elected in non-presidential years. So I cannot stress enough how important it is that you vote. Every time they tell you there's an election, go and vote. Read up on the issues, read up on the candidates. Sometimes in March, there's an election about a penny sales tax. And you're like, that doesn't matter. Absolutely it matters. That sales tax is how we fund our school renovations so that our children aren't sitting in dilapidated, broken down schools at East Plus. That's an off election, some weird, odd year in March when you don't think about elections. But please, 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 ma'am and sir, vote in every election because they all matter.
Thank you, Elder Martin. Bishop Hodges, and then we're going to go to Judge Penny. Go ahead, Bishop.
I'm going to divide my time into two things. I want to double back to that last question because Judge Oliver Waymar made so many sagacious points. One of the things that we have to realize is that we elected an extremist.
Yes.
He has no civility. He has no decency. We see it in his lack of preparation. We see it in a lack of communication, a lack of connection with his own people and his own party. We see that. So as a result, what happens now is America champions a person like this, which is revealing. You tell me who you support, I'll tell you how you feel. And that's revealing about America. Now, we have to ask ourselves, at what point do we understand the absolute necessity of voting? And I want to say, at the very base level. Local elections are essential. We couldn't have framed a sentence better than Judge Oliver. We have to train our politicians.
Yes.
We have to train them to value and respect our opinion, our presence, our vote, and what we bring to the table, our concerns. We have to train them to do that. If we do that, then when we finally get them to their last stage in Washington, then we've got people that we can trust. They build integrity, right? Here's the challenge, though. The challenge with local elections is that we have not pushed people to be all in. I play poker. And I don't know, maybe that's a sin in the building I'm sitting in, but I play poker, and so.
Go ahead.
And so in Texas Hold'em poker, they give everybody 2 cards.
Okay.
And then you have to make the best 5 card hands in the poker ranking with the 5 cards that you get. So then there are 3 community cards, then there's a card on the turn and a card on the river, right? If you believe you have the best hand,
right,
you shove all your chips in the middle,
right, and
you holler, I'm all in. That's where voters have to be. They have to believe that they got the best hand if they just vote. They gotta shove their chips in the middle. And they gotta say, I'm all in. And that's all in every election. I would even suggest that they're all in even if they don't understand all of the variables. Yes. They don't understand all of the people. They don't understand everything that's at stake, but at least they show up. At least they get acquainted. At least they say, you know what? I'm not 100% on all this, but I'm going to trust my gut and make some healthy choices and decisions about who's going to be in a seat that impacts and affect me. Until we're willing to do that, we end up in the current predicament. Every major change in America and around the world started as a grassroots effort. Every single one. We have 2 streams of Christianity because of a grassroots effort. Catholicism and Protestantism.
Wow. I'm trying to get, there she is. Let's go to Judge Penny Brown Reynolds. Would you talk to us a little bit? How important to you would you say are the local elections, the state elections? Talk to us about that. And after that, after Judge Penny is finished, we're going to have a special guest come and ask a question. She's from Spelman College. So Judge Penny Brown Reynolds, it's on.
Absolutely. We often say in politics, and I have served as the governor's lawyer, first African-American to do so in this nation, that all politics is local. And what that means is, I go back to what I was sharing about voting our interests and voting for the conditions and the betterment of the conditions of our community. And so it is absolutely critical that the elections, the local elections, are as important as anything else. Because from my perspective, too many people in power have grown accustomed and satisfied with Black and brown people being disenfranchised and marginalized. Too many people in power have grown accustomed and feel like it's acceptable that we have issues of police brutality, and when those issues are raised, that the issue is then reframed as being radical or somehow anti-police, to be able to stand up and say, wait a minute, the presidential elections have no bearing on who selects the police chief in various jurisdictions. And so if we want change that actually affects us and our day-to-day living, it is in these local elections, the judiciary, most of the time. Now, recently, we've had some challenges to incumbents, but those positions would normally go unchallenged. And judges are sentencing individuals that affects individuals' lives, from district attorneys to sheriff's departments. And so to me, it is in these local elections that if we realign our focus on what really matters to us and use this principle of reciprocity. If you want my vote, then what are you going to give me for my vote? And make it as transactional as it needs to be, because doing it for the sake of believing in these people, too many people have made promises to us. And I think on so many levels, I'm a voter. All of us are voters. All of us are now privileged. We may have not come from privilege. I know I did not. But there's a whole group of people out here who are hurting. And they want to believe in something so badly. But when they take a look at 2 parties that seem to almost look the same, we have to educate them that we can't blindly just give away our vote, but that vote must mean something. And they have the right to expect something for their vote. I know I certainly do. I expect to be able to pick up the phone and call every elected official that I voted for. I do so not just because I'm Judge Penny Brown Reynolds, but because I gave a vote to do it. I give donations so that I can have a voice. And so I think that we need to really educate everyone to not feel so powerless in this process, but that let them recognize that we do in fact have power, but we have to understand how to exercise it. Because it doesn't matter how much power you have if you don't know how to exercise it. And one thing I know about voting, public policy issues are policy issues that really affect us day to day. Educational issues, issues about our pocketbooks, as Elder so eloquently said initially, as one of his top issue. And so all politics is local. And I think that you do yourself a disservice, because when you don't take these local elections seriously, you're giving away your power. And we don't want to do that, right?
Thank you. Judge Oliver wants to jump in here.
And it's really actually a question for Judge Penny Brown Reynolds, honestly. And that is, in the last election in this local area that has about 35 to 40,000 residents, only about 10% elected our officials. That means 10% of us had a say. So what happened to the other 90%? What did they want? And so now when they're upset about something, you had a chance to speak on that with your vote, but you didn't. And now even still you don't speak. And so I think it's important on the local level that you speak where your voice is going to be heard the loudest.
Right.
Judge Oliver, I have to about that. I serve a community. The good thing about being also in the law is the fact that I'm in the ministry. And I serve folks that I have to give money to stay in an extended hotel because they can no longer afford an apartment. I serve people who I have to go get food cards for them. They have voted before, and people suffer from such oppression that all they want to do is make it day to day. And I'm just being honest with you. That's why my heart just goes out to people who I know that they want better. I know they want to have the American dream. They don't know that this system is operating just the way it was designed to operate. And that they're thinking that somehow something is innately wrong with them when they can't make it or they can't get ahead, when we know that the data clearly shows that a child that's born in poverty has a 97% chance of remaining in poverty. That's even more than it was 50 years ago. And so what then do we say to our people in the pulpit? And what do we say when we are so woke that we know about voting, when we live in our fine homes and we drive our cars and we have our wonderful degrees? I'm talking to the folk who's out here struggling every day. And they really just don't think in their hearts that their vote matters, because people have shown them that they don't care about them. And so what I want to say tonight to them, and what you've been saying, Judge, and what all of us have collectively been saying, which is why Pastor Haney even had this, God put this on his spirit. All hope is not lost. They win when they make you believe that you have no power. And that if we're showing it because we're standing in line for hours and hours, but you are not a forgotten people. But we have to remember, we can't expect them not to forget about our people. We can't forget about our people. We can't get so high and mighty and so much in our degrees, whether it's the boardroom or the courtroom, wherever God has blessed us to be privileged enough. I'm so grateful that I have not forgotten what it felt like to be hungry. And I have not forgotten those people who sometimes they just don't vote because they're struggling just to even put one foot in front of another. But we're here to let you know today that we can't make any commitments about what these candidates are going to do. But if you don't fight back, it takes something out of you and your soul, and fighting back is boldly.
Amen.
Powerful. Judge Penny Brown Reynolds, you are one of a kind. Thank you so much for those words. And this panel has been dynamic. I've been moved sitting here on the stage, and I pray also that those online are enjoying this debate, this conversation just as much as I am on tonight. I want to slide just for a moment as we were talking about the importance of reaching back to our community, and in our community are our children. Judge Oliver spoke about training up the politicians, training up those who are coming behind us. So at this time, I want to bring a young lady who's very near and dear to me. She is a senior at Spelman College here in Atlanta, Georgia. Her name is Miss Olivia Haney. She's going to come with a question for our panel on this evening. Let's greet her as she comes. Miss Olivia.
Hello, everyone. Sorry. Right here, okay. The panel has been great. I loved hearing all of your responses. Definitely powerful to me, and especially my generation. So a quick question. I actually had this conversation in a class I recently just had with another judge. We just had this conversation. So the question is to you. During this election, of course, you have the Democratic Party versus the Republican Party. And the conversation that we were having is our faith, our Christian faith belief versus our actual equality in fighting for our race. So one could say the Republican Party sides more with a religious viewpoint. One could say also it's more siding with our Christian viewpoint. As the Democratic Party comes from more of a freedom, everybody is free to will, support the people or do what everyone feels they can do. So where do you find, or where's the line that you draw when you are fighting with your Christian faith versus fighting for equality? Because one knows that the Republican Party is not always for the best interest of the African American people. And you could say the Democratic Party is more, but they side more with a liberal viewpoint. That's a great word. A liberal viewpoint, a freedom viewpoint. Everyone can do what they feel to do. Whereas a Christian belief is there are some things that we don't do because that's based on our principles. So where do you draw that line of standing on your belief, but also standing on what is also moral and ethic as an African American? How do you differentiate the two?
Yeah, let me start, if you don't mind. That's a hot little mission for me. So I'd like to first put my position out there. I don't believe in any way that either of the parties have this overwhelming sense of moral, ethical system of value. I just don't believe it at all whatsoever. There are 1,000 reasons why I don't believe that, but let me at least just kind of espouse one or two. The first is this. Jesus says, when you've done it to the least of these, that's going to be the foundational premise for me as a Christian, because as a Christian, I have a Christian worldview. So I see things through the lens of Scripture, sacred Scripture, Christian Scripture, right? So I'm concerned that there's a problem with the least of these on both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans. I'm also concerned that there is not enough sense of valuing for people to get them on track on both sides of the aisle. And I'm holding both sides of the aisle responsible for this. I love the way Democrats point and they say, well, the Republicans are this, and the Republicans point and say, the Democrats are this. Well, the truth is, both of them are really playing the guitar with only two strings. What matters to us and what matters to us. That's unfortunate. It is certainly unfortunate and catastrophic in terms of how that happens. And let me prove my point. Whatever comes out of Washington, whether it's Republican or Democrat, is going to impact and affect the communities. When we had a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House and a Democratic presidency, the same thing is going to happen. Republican Senate, Republican House, Republican presidency, the same things are going to happen. People lose their sense of compass when they get to Washington. When they get elected, they lose their sense of compass. Judge Brown alluded to that a moment ago. Judge Oliver suggested it some time ago, that when we put people in office, they still have to be responsible to us, irrespective of what side of the aisle that they're on. Now let me get to your question, I'll be very brief, Pastor Haney. I believe this, that we should be contemplative, reflective, and cathartic when it comes to our decision. And that we bring our spirituality and we bring our experience as Black people to our formation of our decisions when it comes to voting. I don't believe we should merely be blind. Or because I'm saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost, I gotta vote this way. Or because I'm Black, I gotta vote this way. I think that we have to really be reflective. We gotta look back and say, what's happened when we voted this way? What's happened when this has been the number one thing that we've considered? We've got to do that, because if we don't do it, then we end up being the people who are burned on one side. I'll give you an example. The Old Testament prophet said Ephraim is a half-baked cake. And so the way they baked cakes in ancient Israel is they take a loaf and they stick it in the oven, and then halfway through the cooking cycle, they have to take it out and spin it around and stick it back in. When the prophet said that Ephraim is a half-baked cake, he was saying somebody put him in and forgot. So he's burned on one side and raw on the other. And that's been our experience. We've been burned on one side and raw on the other because we've been disappointed by who's in the office. And once we get disappointed by who's in the office, we don't vote again. Or we voted based on what we perceived was the right thing to do theologically, and we missed the right thing to do based on who we are as a people. So now we've got to ask ourselves, what's the way we marry them so that it becomes the kind of hybrid that guides our decision?
That's a great question, Olivia. I'm very proud as your big Morehouse brother of the way you shared that. Let me say it like this. I often get in these debates every 4 years or so when folks want to challenge me. I am a staunch Democrat, okay? I am so because of empirical data and because of the people that I care about, going back to the least of these. I'm living very comfortably in the middle class. I don't get any assistance from the government. I'm not looking for a handout or anything like that. And neither are all the other Democrats. That's a misnomer that's been created in partisan politics over the years. I'm not trying to elect the prelate. I'm trying to elect the president. I'm not looking for a bishop. And if I am, I'm certainly not looking in the halls of Congress or anywhere in any kind of governmental space for someone to help guide me spiritually. That is not the role of government in the United States. This is not a theocracy. The United States is not a Christian nation. We're a nation that's founded on Christian principles, but we are not a Christian nation. Let me tell you how many prove my point real quick. The First Amendment of the United States gives you freedom of religion. And I am saved, sanctified, and Holy Ghost filled bishop. Sometimes my shout goes a little off step, but I am saved for real. But I know there's a duality for me as a Christian that we have to be careful about. And I like to use examples. There was a place in Michigan, you probably know this, Bishop, as a Michigander, where there is the highest concentration of people of the Muslim faith outside of the Middle East in the entire world. Dearborn, Michigan, right? If a job brings me to Dearborn, Michigan, or something brings my family up there and we move there, I don't want my kids going to public school being espoused with Islamic beliefs. Just like I wouldn't want that Islamic child going into a public school setting being espoused with Christian beliefs, because the Constitution of the United States gives us freedom of religion, and no religion should be torn down or built up by the United States government. I'm teaching Ethan at home, Christopher and Kennedy at home, about their Christianity. If I want to send them to a Christian school, we did that for many years, just like you did when you went to Berean. Right? At some point, right? And so at the end of the day, as a political historian, as a political scientist, the greatest hoax the other party pulled on us in 1973, when they were looking for an issue to co-opt the religious right into their party. They thought it was going to be pornography at first. It didn't work. They chose abortion. Because if you look at political history, you'll see that Southern Republicans and Southern Democrats alike were in favor of abortion because they thought it would stop more black children from being born. And again, I'll see the empirical data on this. I'm talking platitudes and opinion. I'm talking about what's fact and what's real. I'm talking about what George Wallace said. Let them abort them children because we don't want to feed them no more. And so at the end of the day, that was co-opted. They found an issue with the Catholic Church and with the religious right, and they co-opted them into their party, and then they began to some kind of way corner Christianity into one party. Well, what Bishop said earlier about the least of these, this is the same party that says they're pro-life, but the minute that child is born, they want to take welfare from them. They don't want to have any health care. They don't want to properly fund that child's schools, or any of that stuff. And that's where you really lose and, quite frankly, offend me. Because again, I'm not here as I don't vote because I need anything. I'm voting because I want this society to be better. And so at the end of the day, I want to just answer your question, is that we have to go to the polls with duality. At the end of the day, this is not church. We're not electing pastors and any of those kinds of things. If something is immoral, that is different, right? In terms of us of a law. I can't think of any. The moral laws I think about is the fact that a black man can be killed by a police officer, and that police officer walks and doesn't get any. Doesn't have to face any consequences for it. That's immoral to me, right? And so at the end of the day, you as a young woman have a double consciousness. You're really a triple consciousness. You're black, you are educated, and you're a Christian. And to reconcile those three things is to think about what Bishop said. What would Jesus do about this? What did Jesus say about it? And quite frankly, Jesus told us to treat each other right and to feed and take care of the needy. And when I go into the ballot box, I listen to who is talking about taking care of people who need it most. And that's how I cast my vote and distinguish between those two.
Thank you, Elder Martin. Thank you, Bishop. I'm going to give an opportunity for Judge Penny possibly to respond to that question, or Judge Oliver.
I don't want to follow Judge.
I don't want to follow.
No, so, oddly enough, I see things very differently sometimes as a judge and as a mother and as a daughter of a single parent, a single mother who was illiterate until she was 18, somebody who just was out there making sure we got what we needed. And my mother always taught me, she never taught me one thing. She said, when you look at someone, when you are deciding what you should do, you look at the fruit first. So I don't care how much of a Christian you tell me you are. If the fruit on that tree does not bear itself out as a Christian fruit, I don't want any parts of it. And I think about that. If the Word of God says that we are to take care and feed the homeless, and you're not feeding the homeless, whether you're Christian or not, because there's some people who are not Christian, not Muslim, have no faith, who do a whole lot more feeding of the hungry than any church I've ever seen. It is what they do. I can line myself up with that person because they are doing what they need to do, whether they're Christian or not. They are aligned in the same manner. They are bearing fruit that is aligned with what I believe should happen. If the party or whatever it is, and first of all, they've deceived you to think that there's only two parties. If you voted already, you'll see that there's probably 20 people running for president. We have bought into a two-party system, but it's not just those two people running. Okay, so that's a farce in and of itself. It's just that we've bought into it, that these are our only two choices. Probably because we're choosing the lesser of one evil sometimes is how it's normally perceived. But you've got to be concerned about whether whatever you choose lines up. You indicated, and you said something about morals and ethics. Morals and ethics are two different things. Ethics are a system of rules and regulations, and so you don't have to have any morals to be ethical. None whatsoever. You just follow the rules. To be moral is how you apply and deal with those ethics and how you deal with people in general and how you treat them and what your expectations of them are. So when you look at who you're going to vote for, whether it be a nonpartisan election like the judges, or whether it be where there are parties, you need to be concerned whether they say they're Christian or not. What are they bearing out? Look at the aftermath of what they're doing and see how that lines up with where you are. And separate your morals from your ethics, because they are very different.
Wonderful answer. Thank you so much, Judge Oliver. Judge Penny Brown. Judge Penny Brown Reynolds.
Well, I'm shaking my head. My sister has hit that on the nail, the morals. I'm going to add another adjective if I can, and for me, it's values. And so my theology is my politics. My theology is everything about what I do, how I treat people, and how I expect people to treat me, and how I expect people to treat others. As a woman of God, I follow the disciple. I am a disciple of Jesus the Christ, who said that the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. America is only as good as it treats its most vulnerable, the poor and those who are marginalized and disenfranchised. And so I am a Democrat because that is the party that at least lines up with my values, which the judge has so eloquently made the distinction between morals and ethics. For me, it is all tied together. It is a moral issue for me, for everyone not to have quality health care. That's a moral issue for me because that follows the tenets of the highest oath that I have taken, and that is to Jesus the Christ. Issues of criminal justice and the inequities that we find in the criminal justice system. That's a moral issue for me. That's my theology. I operate under that. The disparities in economics, that we are in a system that is perfectly comfortable with a company like Amazon or whomever not paying taxes, while the burdens of cashiers and school teachers and everyone else are paying taxes, with the ones who can afford it the most are not. That's a moral issue for me. That's just my opinion. I can go down the list. And so I am never going to operate with because I'm not a religious person. I believe I'm a spiritual person. But my integrity, everything that I am as a spokesman for God and as a part of the resistance, because that's what I believe Jesus was a part of, the resistance of the status quo. I came out of extreme poverty. It is a part of who I am. And so Reverend William Barber sees it similar in that way, that we have an obligation to be able to help those who cannot help themselves. We have that obligation. It's a moral obligation. So I'm not going to bifurcate how I see things. I am this person. I've been this person from the moment I was put on the bench. Now I officially retired March 1st, but I'm not on the bench now. I made a choice about how I'm going to decide. And Olivia, you're my mentee. Outstanding, brilliant young woman. And I thank God that I get to be your mentor. But I'm saying to you that you can be the one person that you are. Now, do I know that if I'm making a judicial decision and I had a record that one could only hope for with reversals on the appellate court, I always sought discernment from God, but I followed the law because that was my role. We had to follow the law. Judges are not the arbiters of creating legislation or law. We got all of that. But I do believe that we cannot allow one side or one party to be able to wrap themselves up in evangelical ideas and call it being Republican. And then here we are sitting as people who we know are Christians, and I'm proud Christian. I'm a proud Democrat. I'm a proud of all of that. But my theology is tied to how you treat my people, how you disseminate the goods and services of my people. It is completely tied together. That's my value system.
Man, thank you so much.
I know I almost started pushing. I'm sorry. I think y'all laughing. I'm telling you the truth. I just, it's a burning inside of me, guys, more than anything, because we spend a whole lot of time trying to maneuver our way through keeping positions to not making people uncomfortable. It is the silence. Dr. King told us, when we have a voice, we've got to stand up and use it. There's a whole generation that this stuff, they're scratching their head. This is not making sense to them. Why do they get to have more than we get to have? We built this country. The math is not adding up. But yet I serve a God that says, now unto him or her who can do exceedingly abundantly above all that we can ask or imagine. We've got to come out of the clouds. Get off our knees, stand up, and make, if we're going to be a disciple of Jesus Christ, that revolutionary, and be that revolutionary for those who are counting on us, the least, the last, and the lost. We owe it to them, don't you think? We owe it to them.
Much, Judge Penny Brown Reynolds. It's been a wonderful evening. To all of those watching virtually, thank you so much for tuning in. I have just enjoyed myself immensely. I want to thank all of our panelists on this evening. Elder Wayne Martin, thank you so much. The Honorable Judge Rashida Oliver, you've been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. Bishop Brian Keith Hodges, my friend, thank you so much, sir. And also to Judge Penny Brown Reynolds, we are so just ecstatic about all of our panelists on this evening. It's been a dynamic night. I want to remind everyone that we have one more day of early voting, which will take place on tomorrow. Please, sir, please, ma'am, do whatever you've got to do. Get to the polls. I assure you, my son, Oliver the Fourth, voted for the first time, and we walked right, he walked, I think I was, we're excited for him. He walked right in. Literally, we were in and out in less than 15 minutes, our whole family. So I encourage everyone, please, sir, please, ma'am. And I tell you this, if you don't make it on tomorrow, we will be at the polls. My team is going to come up here. Now, son, let me let my son come show you. Our team is going to be all over the city on election day. We'll be wearing these t-shirts here. Come on. We'll be wearing these shirts here. It says the driven vote, our voice. I want to ask everyone, if you would, please go to the polls on November the 3rd. Make sure that you are there. Your voice must be heard. Your voice must be counted. We're looking forward to seeing you on November the 3rd. It's important that we all vote. Thank you so much for joining us on this evening. Once again, to our wonderful panel, it's been a beautiful night. God bless each of you. Have a great evening.